Hi, I'm here at the legislative building here in Richmond because the legislature, the Senate and the House have both passed a bill that is creating the Virginia Nuclear Energy Consortium Authority. This authority is formed for promoting nuclear energy of all kinds and all nuclear related industries. And for those of us who have been fighting the uranium mining issue in Virginia, we see this consortium authority as a mechanism for the legislature and the governor to sidestep direct responsibility for their part in lifting the ban on uranium mining. This consortium apparently could operate without being subject to the Freedom of Information Act. The members of the authority appointed by the governor would be members of the nuclear-related industries along with university professionals. And we have already had it stated by one of the sponsors of this bill that they could, in fact, write the regulations for mining. And so if this consortium authority is about promoting all things nuclear, that would include getting uranium out of the ground, which would be the cradle part of this, the cycle of nuclear, to the grave, which could include the burial of radioactive waste even beyond the mine tailings. I'm here because the effect of uranium mining in Virginia would continue to promote the production of more and more nuclear waste that we don't have any place to put safely so far. So while they have already passed this bill, we are here to make a statement on record that we will continue to oppose this, and we are demanding that this consortium does not get involved in writing regulations for uranium mining, and that it does not entertain the thought of hosting nuclear waste in the state as well.
Thank you. Backdoor way to lift the ban on uranium mining, and
I cannot find that in the bill.
I didn't either, but
I got the same call.
Many of us who voted for it are staunchly opposed to it, and I wonder if Frank could explain for the committee and folks in the audience why this is not going to affect the ban on uranium mining.
It's not in the bill.
Mr. Chairman.
Things going in the nuclear industry, but I don't believe mining is mentioned at all, but their powers and duties.
And final question. Without expressly being authorized to adopt regulations related to uranium mining, in this bill, they can't do it. In other words, the consortium and the authority only have the duties expressly granted to them in this bill.
It has nothing to do with uranium.
Mr. Chairman.
It may do agenda.
Mr. Chairman. In particular, in my area, with Areva and Babcock and Wilcox, we're doing a lot of research on nuclear reactors and mini reactors. In fact, Babcock and Wilcox just received a federal grant, and they were the only one that was recognized in the whole nation to be able to accomplish, because they're already doing some tremendous work right in Forest dealing with mini reactors, and they were the recipient of a tremendous grant that will create a lot of jobs to be able to accomplish this mini reactor by the year 2022. And this is so that these groups can collaborate and join together and share information and further the work that they're doing in the utilities.
Delegate Joanna.
Non-stock, non-profit corporation. As a private corporation, they would have no authority to adopt regulations regarding how any type of business conducts its activities in the Commonwealth.
Well, in the powers, you've got all the powers listed. There are a whole bunch of them in section 67-1402, and it talks about the powers of staff authority. And you're sure that in those powers, this is Mr. Jones is sitting over there. If I say this isn't in my field, he's going to start laughing again. I don't do work in this stuff. And neither does Terry. But I'm just saying to you, you're sure that if this bill passes, that we're not granting any authority pursuant to 67.1402, that they can say, well, uranium is a substance that we use in this authority. We're nuclear authority, so you can use uranium to have power for nuclear energy. I don't know. I'm just asking that question to you because if it becomes a court issue, a court case, I don't know where it's going to go. And I just want to make sure that we're not stepping into something that we could get hurt on otherwise.
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Jones raised two questions. One, you mentioned the consortium. The powers and duties of the consortium are listed in subsection B of 67.1404, and again, they have nothing to do with the regulation of mining or anything regarding how any business would conduct its activities. Similarly, the powers and duties with respect to the authority, in looking through them, again, they are being established for the purposes that are enumerated there. This body is not authorized to promulgate regulations for how either licenses are issued or the conduct of business would be conducted by an entity in Virginia.
And Delegate Barrett.
Mr. Chairman, I talked to the patron regarding this, Delegate Duran. I talked to the patron, mainly the patron of the House bill as well. Being that uranium is in the middle of my district, I was getting a lot of calls too. And there's nothing in this bill that deals with mining and milling of uranium. Now, there are some who drew the line in the sand and said, we don't want a period. I'm not one of those who drew the line in the sand. If scientists can come together and develop a way to isolate the harmful effects of the tailings and all and make them impotent and all that, right now I don't think that exists. That's why I'm against it. But this consortium is going to be, we have Hampton Roads Submarine, we got Dominion with the nuclear reactors, we got Areva, we got Babcock, Wilcox. We have the industry, you know. It's not anything about mining and milling of uranium. And I know people distrust, and they probably got good reason, I don't know, but I tell you, nobody trusts anybody, and I don't trust anybody. But I know this bill.
I'm hurt.
I don't believe this bill deals with anything. I had an amendment prepared I was going to offer, but I talked to the patron. We agreed that it probably was not necessary. That would specifically say that this act does not give any power to talk about mining or milling or anything. And if the act really doesn't do that, the amendment wouldn't hurt. But I say that I promised him, and I'm a man.
I'm sure the amendment would be germane anyway. But anyway, let's move on. Anybody want to speak against the bill?
With the assessment that this bill would not authorize uranium mining. However, this bill doesn't enumerate a lot of things with regard to what can be done by the nuclear energy industry, including fuel reprocessing, etc. So I think that Delegate Merricker's suggestion with regard to the amendment was actually appropriate because I'm not sure that there's an intention here to allow this authority to research, develop, or propose regulations of uranium mining, and that certainly is possible in this bill. This bill says nothing about reprocessing of fuel. This bill says nothing specifically about designing particular reactors or thorium reactors. So this bill is silent as to what it will do, and so it's open to basically any activities with respect to nuclear energy, which includes uranium mining. So I'm not suggesting this bill.
Let me just tell you, the problem is if I ruled it was germane for him to put his amendment on, then it's germane to put an amendment on the floor to open up uranium mining. If you want to go there, I do not think you want to go there because that would That would pass the General Assembly, so you don't want to do that.
Well, I just want to apprise the committee that this bill does, in fact, allow the development of research and development and other work associated with uranium mining, even though it cannot, in and of itself, authorize uranium mining. Okay? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Delegate?
Could I ask Mr. Mesa, in the bill, what language would authorize that?
Well, if you look at the powers, okay, again,
I'm just
well, specifically, this bill is silent with regard to the nature of the nuclear research that would undertake, right? It doesn't mention thorium reactors, it doesn't mention reprocessing fuel, it doesn't mention design reactors, it's silent with regard, it simply says nuclear energy, right? So the whole fuel cycle of nuclear energy, including the disposal of waste, comes under nuclear energy. So there's nothing in this bill that would preclude research or other activities, including even conceivably searching for other folks who would want to develop uranium mining in the state, recognizing that before they could mine, they would have to come back to the General Assembly. But there's nothing in this bill to preclude research and other activities associated with uranium mining, even perhaps something along the lines with the governor did last year without authorizing the legislature, is to spend money basically undertaking a review of the regulatory authority that was needed. That certainly would be under the purview of this bill. This bill does not preclude that in any way.
Delegate, way to follow up.
Yeah, I'm looking at 67.1402, Section B. It has 18 very specific, very understandable English clauses. None of them, as you acknowledge, have anything to do with nuclear mining or milling.
They have to do with
and you're
nuclear energy.
arguing that the silence outside of this authorizes.
This authorizes any activities with regard to nuclear energy. It does.
Where? I've asked you where.
By virtue of the fact that it's silent with respect to the specifically enumerated activities, like thorium reactors, etc. Let me point out also that the very first person to serve on this board is the Director of Mines, Minerals, and Energy. That's the very first person listed here. That would be the agency with primary responsibility with mining uranium too. So again, I do not believe that this bill in and of itself authorizes uranium mining, but it certainly does open the door for a wide range of activities leading up to that activity. And I wouldn't be surprised a few years from now to see this authority before this legislative body advocating for your repeal of uranium mining.
All right, Delegate Hugo.
I guess the question for the gentleman is, I mean, I think there's a broad diversity of opinion on what we should do with uranium mining within the Commonwealth. But when you say you're opposed to this because it might open up research, what's wrong with research? I mean, you want to have knowledge about what's happening on these various issues. If you're operating without the knowledge, operating without basic research on this, then you really put yourself at a disadvantage. What is wrong with research?
Well, that's a good question. And first let me go back to, I think when the questions were directed at Mr. Munyon, he never really said that this bill wouldn't preclude, he simply said this bill would not authorize uranium mining. Okay, so I agree with that. This bill would not authorize uranium mining. But we are concerned about uranium mining in the state of Virginia, and so we are basically we are concerned and opposed to anything that would further its development. Bottom line is, you look at the city of Virginia Beach, Norfolk, a range of localities, they're all very concerned about their water quality, and frankly, let's just wait until somebody else comes up with a better solution.
Yeah,
I mean, he really didn't answer the question about research. I mean, Delegate Merrick's down there saying, and it directly impacts his district, saying that if the research could ever prove that you could do things safely, then it might change people's opinions. But people have a diversity of opinion now. But I think for you to oppose research on an important issue, and this is not just a Virginia issue, this is a national issue. When you're talking about energy for the Commonwealth, energy for America, when you say we want to fly in the dark, we don't want to know anything about anything, I think that's foolish.
Well, let me just say this, that with regard to the nuclear energy industry, they've been working on the waste issue now since the inception of nuclear power. And right now we have 2 high-level nuclear waste dumps in Virginia, which are basically the North Anna plant and the Surrey plant. Those are authorized and carry basically high-level nuclear waste because there's no place else to put it. They've been working on that issue for 60 years and they haven't solved it.
That's exactly the point. The nuclear waste is sitting there, and if you don't have research to figure out how to do this, how to resolve that problem, you're never going to do it. You just said you oppose research.
We don't have any faith in that process.
Let's move on.
And look, I just want everybody to be clear. I do not now, henceforth, or ever support under any circumstances lifting the ban on uranium mining in Virginia. Having said that, well, yeah.
Ever?
Ever, that's what I said. Having said that, I don't think this bill opens the door to do that for two reasons, and I'm really struggling to understand why you all don't agree.
Okay, wait a minute. If anybody, all right, here, I'm going to rule something right now. Using the chairman's, you can speak about something that's specifically in this bill, you can do it, but we're not running down uranium mining because this has nothing to do with it.
Well, here's my question. This